Hi, everybody. Welcome to our regular Tuesday afternoon chat. It's Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding. I am sitting here with Doug as usual because, boy, howdy, would that be a boring show? How you doing, Doug?
Hey, great, Matt. How are you today?
Oh, you know how it goes. I am tired and cranky, but we're here. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk some hockey. Um, yeah, so I got to go and do a thing last weekend that you just found out about before we showed up here. I
Yeah,
got to see my first NHL game in a really long time.
yeah, it's been a long time since you went with me.
Uh-huh. So I was thinking about it. I was trying to remember the last time I actually went to a game. Um, One of the first things that occurred to me is it has been so long that I have never checked into Facebook, it being at the Canucks game or any other NHL game, because you couldn't do that the last time I was at a game. Like, okay, so we're thinking 12, 13 years maybe. And then I realized what the last game I actually saw was. Several girlfriends before my current wife. It was about 2001, the Detroit Red Wings and the Vancouver Canucks. So
Ah,
almost 25 years between me being in Rogers Arena for a hockey game. So that was a whole thing.
I think I think you were maybe too young to remember,
Hmm.
or it might be too far back at all. I'm just trying to remember NHL games that I went to, and one of the infamous NHL games that we went to was the Vancouver Canucks
Hmm.
and the Philadelphia Flyers back when they were really the Broadway bullies
Yeah.
in in Vancouver on New Year's. I think it was New Year's Eve, and
Hmm.
that was the one that was the infamous game where there was just brawl after brawl after brawl, and yeah, if you were you were really young and probably wouldn't remember, but
Yeah, that's not ringing any bells for me.
yeah, that
I
that
think
was
the
a famous game, still a famous game.
well, the 80s.
Yep.
Stuff went down. If it wasn't high scoring, it was high penalties or both. If you were really lucky, just action packed. No, the first time I remember seeing an NHL game, it was the Canucks and the Oilers,
Mhm.
about 88, 89. And it was the first time the Oilers had been back in Vancouver since Gretzky was traded.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
that was the first.
your uncle actually did an interview with Uncle Keith, did
Hmm.
an interview with Wayne at Los Angeles, Vancouver. I don't know whether it was a game or whether yeah, it had to
Yeah.
be a preseason game. And I can remember your uncle phoning me and saying, "Guess who I just talked to?" And I'm going,
Yeah. Yeah. And he brought us
yeah,
autographs from that too.
yeah."
So I
He had
remember the autograph.
yeah, he was just going to broadcasting school at
Hmm.
the time, and they had him do. He said he told him he knew all about hockey, which so he would be glad to go and do that for them. So I was pretty impressed. Yeah, he did bring you autographs from
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Sure did. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. No idea what happened to it, but um, what can you do? But yeah, it was a good time. Unfortunately, I missed the first goal because the restaurant we were at up the street was a little slow getting all the bills out. For some reason, half the people in the restaurant wanted their bills all at the exact same time. Can't imagine why, being 2 blocks from the arena. Um, what can you do? And but yeah, I got there. It was a decent first period. This is free tickets from the company I work for. It was rare that they gave out Canucks tickets on the weekend, so us poor monkeys in the coveralls actually had a shot at it rather than having to take a day off because we work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning in some cases. Um, yeah, and then I discovered between periods that an old buddy of mine was playing guitar for Karen Lee Batten, who was doing some singing in between periods there. She is a staple at the Canucks games. Lovely lady. I've met her several times. And I ended up in the concourse having a cocktail with those two and catching up for most of the second period to the point where they said they had to go. And I went, why? And I realized that I had missed all but about 3 minutes of the period. And as you do, you can't just walk back to your seat whenever you want. I had to wait for the play stoppage to happen, and while I was waiting, the period actually ended. So then I was that one poor fish trying to swim upstream against the rush to the bathroom and the concession lines. And then I had to apologize for my wife for disappearing for a whole period. But I have witnesses. I wasn't that far away. But
actually sounds like a great day. Even for you, you get to throw the music in and a whole bunch of friends. That's your kind of hockey game.
That's exactly it. And it was a decent game. I'm not going to say it was a barn burner, but it did get some notoriety.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, howdy! The third period got a little aggressive. It's made a bunch of the news. Are you familiar with what went on there?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Trennan thought he was in the UFC. That's all I can say for it. I was on the opposite end of the rink, but the same side as it happened, so we didn't get a great view of it. For those that are unfamiliar, just give me a second here, and we will have a quick look at what's going on, courtesy of Sportsnet. And where are we here? Oh, you're not the only one with technical issues. There we go. Let's have a look at this. So here we go, and we're going to cut back here just as the play ends. There we are. They're having to go. Down we go, and right there.
Yep.
That was UFC style ground and pound. That's unfortunately, it's just one of those things where it's an aggressive game and shit happens. There's a line though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, some stuff can be let go. It's normally you go down to the ice, it's over.
Done. Yeah.
It's done. There was a bit of a stumble there. A couple more punches were thrown. It didn't look too bad from my point of view seeing it live. However, when they put the replay back up in the big screen, that was a late shot, UFC style ground and pound. What goes on there? Like, is it just emotions are running high, adrenaline's flowing, and there you have it?
You're looking at how do I put this? Well, certainly one of the tougher guys on Minnesota being counted on to win that kind of stuff, to bring your team back to life. And he didn't do too well when they were standing up. As a matter of fact, I would have really called not much of a decision for Vancouver. And then when he was taken down, what happens is the referees always, and this is why guys usually stop when it goes down. Referees or linesmen step in and they grab players that they can grab. Well, they grabbed the Canuck player on the ice, and I think he had a pretty good bump on the back of the head from that. And the Minnesota player. So, good opportunity. I lost the fight, but I don't have to lose the fight. I can win the fight down here. But I call that, not exactly what the expectations are. And, he got 2 or 3 really good shots on with a guy laying on the ice, with a referee and him laying on top of him. When it's certainly against the protocol of generally what a fight should be. They don't mind the guys standing up and swinging at each other while they're standing. But once you've gone to the ice, you can grab and push and hold and hug. But generally there's no shots thrown. But for me, frustration of Minnesota guy, he lost the standing up part, so
Hmm.
he was going to do the best that he could to prove that he's still the guy that can win the battle. So
Yep,
yeah,
and unfortunately, Derek Forbort took a pounding there. He fractured his orbital bone, I believe, is
yep,
what they have reported since then. Um, Oof. But yeah, that's a stiff shot, and your head's not going anywhere. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like the UFC has got a trampoline for a mat because it's not the case. It's basically a boxing ring with 8 sides, which actually makes it stiffer. Um, but I mean, that's he takes that punch to the face, lying down, and probably relaxed because he's on the ground and you've done this before. You've played hockey before. You've been in the fights before. It's like, okay, it's going to get broken up, and then you take that cheap shot, and that's really what it was.
yeah,
I mean, you saw him the first sort of stutter that he pulled back. You see, he's like, okay, that was just at the ground, so I could have been like, oh no, we're done. But then he winds up and takes another one,
yeah.
and that's skull to ice, fist to face. Not a whole lot of give anywhere
Give.
but the bones of your face. So that's I mean, there's really no other way to say it other than a cheap shot. And we don't see it as often as we could in hockey, but we've seen some pretty gnarly cheap shots over the years. Sticks being used as baseball bats have resulted in court cases from a hockey game, which you're not supposed to go to court for what you do on the ice, but when you're that far over the line, I mean, that's assault with a weapon. I don't know if this one sort of qualifies as maybe there should be some outside legal ramifications, but that's definitely not something I thought I would have seen. Now, as a coaching perspective, have you had to deal with a player that has gotten that wound up? And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes you gotta think that some of these players on the other team that are very adept at chirping at other players wind that frustration up. However, it doesn't necessarily mean this was the case in this incident, but it also doesn't mean you should take that cheap shot or you should take the stick to the head. So have you had to deal with this as a coach on either side where you've either had the player, take the cheap shot or give one out and then you have to deal with it? Because I mean, he got tossed from the game. I sawing it, they're seeing it. I'm just going to create my own language while we go. I knew he was getting a 10-minute at least.
Mhm.
Bare minimum a 10-minute on that one. But he got bounced, rightly so. The building came up with the "You can't do this" chant, which was awesome because it made me feel like I was back on my wrestling cruise because we will chant all sorts of stuff in that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And that carried on. And I looked at my coworker's husband and I thought, you know what? I'm not saying he should have done it. I'm not saying it was cool. I'm not defending it in any way. But at the same time, I kind of want him to come out of the penalty box, flip everybody off on his way across the ice and out of the building, going, "Well, I did it, so fuck you."
Mhm.
Um, it just have that little bit of realism. I mean, it. Anywho, let's get to your side of it as a coach. This stuff goes down. You got a player that's just taking the cheap shot, or you got a player that has just decided to go above and beyond in the aggression. What's your thoughts there?
It's it's very depends on the circumstances. No, never, no, none of it should ever happen. But yeah, I've seen it too many times, even at the junior level.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to uh, a double circumstance. There was a playoff game that we were playing in. Actually, Danny Hodgson was a primary uh, recipient of this particular one. Uh, and he had another ex NHL hockey player
Mm-hmm.
who perpetrated it. We were playing against Abbotsford. It was the last game of. They were pretty well going out. We were up 3-1, I think, in the series, And in the last, I don't know, 10 minutes of the game, Abbotsford players were pretty frustrated. One of their parents dumped a garbage bag of or garbage pail of water on our bench. How he got through our
Ooh,
cans to get to do that was a little
wow.
hard to believe. Uh, I got a little wet. Some of our players got a little wet. So the game continued,
Hmm.
and Danny Hodgson just scored a goal, and we're coming back and went back to the play, and we chased the ex NHL hockey player on their side into the corner, and we took he Danny took the puck away from him, and this player slashed Danny across the arms and broke his arm.
Oh,
We
Jesus.
didn't see we didn't see very much of Danny in the next series. He tried to play in a couple of games, but he could hardly hold on to his stick. But anyway, so when that happened, we had another player from Ontario who basically, you know, he was a good hockey player. He played on. He's good enough to play on Danny's line. Uh, he uh, he went over and absolutely physically dismantled this hockey player badly enough that after
Hmm.
it was all settled and done, we lost Danny, but we also lost Dean. They suspended Dean for the beating that he put on Craig Redmond for 10 games, which put him out of the next series.
You were
You
doing
talk
so
about
well without dropping the
circumstances.
names of who it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
I
that's fine.
wasn't
It's
thinking.
cool because
Yeah.
I know it's legit. People can look it up and it's legit. But you mean Dean Evison, correct?
No,
No.
no. Dean was actually playing in Kamloops that year. This was the second year in Cowichan.
Oh, second year.
It's
Okay,
the second year, yeah. And
different Dean
Dean
entirely.
Bell, Dean.
Evison is completely
Well, we're
innocent
throwing
here.
the names out here. Dean. It was Dean Bell who had come to join our team from. He knew a couple or knew one player that was on our team and was playing hockey in Ontario and asked for a transferred out here, and he was a pretty decent hockey player. He was a great guy, a great team guy. Like he stood up for a lot of the guys on the team, and he was tough as nails. And not that Craig Redmond wasn't tough as nails, but because Craig and I got to be very good friends years later. After his NHL career was done, he used to come to the arena, and we were at let me think, we were at Langley Twin Rinks, and I was doing hockey development and private training with. We had a bunch of NHL guys who'd come in and
Hmm.
do skating things
Yep.
with me, and Craig had just signed with Edmonton to, you know. Get back into the NHL, and he was working like a slave, and so I got to work with him then, and I asked him if he ever remembered that. He says he remembered the beating. He didn't remember the breaking Danny Hodgson's arm. I said, "Oh, sure, you must, Craig, because that was the first year that aluminum sticks were in. So you turned around and cracked
Mm.
him twice right across the hands after he'd scored his goal and then continued play. He took a puck away from you down in your end." And he says, "Yeah, all I can remember, I don't really remember that. You never remember the part
Yeah, you don't
that
remember instigating the problem.
Dean
Um,
Bell was on the ice and he came over to you and he pushed one or two guys out and he just beat the living pee out of you, and that was a too much. Like Craig was
mhm,
on the ice just getting the same kind of wailing that our Canucks friend was getting. But
mhm,
Dean paid the price. He got 10-game suspension for it. And so not only we lost Danny, who tried to come back and play a little,
I believe
but
that.
we lost Dean Bell too, which was a big part because the team that we played for the final was New Westminster, and they had some pretty good players and a couple of their guys actually got to go on to the NHL. Uh,
Mhm.
so anyway, it was very interesting situation. And yes, I've had more of players when that just would continue. I know in my playing days, I didn't do. I'd done a lot of boxing as a kid off the arena, but on the ice, there were a couple of circumstances where I became irritated and hard to control too. So I had a little bit of
Now,
sympathy for some of those people.
now again, I'm going to ask you: where is this a case of not just defending, the golden goose player on the ice, your franchise player, but is it a case of just somebody was deliberately trying to draw a penalty, just chirping a little too much, getting under your skin, being sneaky when the ref's not looking, and getting his little shots in, and
So,
paying? Well, I mean, it's called FOFO. You fool around, you find out. Uh,
yeah,
I am trying not to curse on the program. I know I've already done that, but I mean, this is aimed
yeah,
at
it,
the youth getting some knowledge to go up those. So I'm going to try to not cuss, which is weird
yeah.
because I use that one word like a comma.
I,
But we're gonna get through this together. Anyways, so the fooling around and find out you're chirping, you're trying to draw a penalty, and maybe rightfully so to get this enforcer character uh, out of the way for a few minutes so that you can deal with
See, it
the
used
golden
to be in
goose
the
or
good old days, Matt, that the enforcer, I mean, literally, the enforcer or the player has to be on the ice nowadays, where
mm-hmm,
in the good old days, the enforcer didn't have to be on the ice. There was a number of
mm-hmm,
occasions when, if one of your people were being picked on, or if one of your teammates was in a losing situation, and the guy expected to win those situations would come off the bench. And eventually, the toughest guy in the arena was the one that everybody stayed away from. So, but yeah, no.
is it kind of like the sports equivalent of wait till your father gets home?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's I'm glad 95% of that stuff doesn't exist in hockey
Mm-hmm,
anymore. Some of it has been rules that the instigator rule, and more respect generally for. I mean, there's still expectations of, to fire up a team, you go out and create some foolishness. I mean, it uh, some fights are started for a purpose,
mm-hmm,
and those purposes can be, you know, uh, to get even,
mm-hmm,
to teach a lesson. The lesson being don't touch our good guys. Tough
yeah,
guys can come on the ice and try and fire up their teams by winning a battle and on the ice. I mean, it's all about battles on the ice.
mm-hmm,
Some are in the corners trying to get loose pucks. Some are pucks around the net. Some are battle through situations to get in behind defense. I mean, it's you know you play the game. You need some skill, and you need to be able to battle through a lot of uh, the other team's defenses to do what you've got to do,
mm-hmm,
score a goal. Or if you're not a big goal scorer and yet you're a team guy, then you know go pick on the toughest guy in their team and have a battle.
mm-hmm,
See how that comes up. If you win, your team's fired up. If you lose, well, your team wasn't fired up anyway, so who cares? You know,
mm-hmm.
it's situational, and I'm glad there's less and less. But we're getting to playoffs. We're game in and game out. Every game counts to grab
Oh yeah,
points. And I mean, Vancouver was a tough season for them for what I thought they might have this year, but there were a lot of changes in the offseason. And I'm pretty sure the Vancouver management thought that they were positive steps moving forward. And some were players just left that you really didn't want to lose. A lot of that stuff you have no control over. And that's all due to who's got a contract and who's got to stay and who's
mm-hmm.
got to go. And, what you need to do to improve your hockey team, to make it perform overall better for your fans, number one. And your fans are always impressed by wins. They're always impressed by making
Yeah.
playoffs. They're always impressed by two or
Well, they're
three
impressed
rounds of
by
the
you
playoffs. So
win the fight, get the hits, like you were saying, like that
yeah,
those momentum changers.
yeah,
Um, now let's switch gears a little bit here. So you're the coach
yep,
of the player that has gone a little too far.
yes,
What that look like to deal with? Now this particular incident, it looks like it's pretty much over and done with the suspensions and whatnot. But when they get a little more serious and we're dealing with uh, league penalties off
yeah.
the ice, what's that look like to sort of cope with and get the rest of the team on track? It's like, oh well, so and so's gone for 10 games because you know he went too far in this bit, and somebody got hurt.
Yep.
So with dealing with the league on that, what's the mentality there? And every situation is going to be a little bit different depending on how it went down, but it's if the league's got to step in, there's got to be a whole other dimension of uh-oh involved.
Well, yeah. Sometimes the league steps in because they know the team won't,
Mhm.
and that there has to be a repercussion. People have to think a whole lot more about what they are, what they aren't doing. I've been on the situation where, I mean, we talked about that one situation. My leagues, stepped in, and I thought Dean had gone too far. I mean,
Mhm.
like it, you would see somebody take a beating like that. You know, but he was mad. I mean,
Yeah, clearly.
yeah, and
Or at
I,
least I
I
hope so. Other
probably
than that, he's
I
got some.
probably would not have given him 10 games. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way. And should I have? Yeah, I probably should have. But I mean, we had just lost our best goal scorer,
Mhm.
for the basically the rest of the playoff season. So,
Well, yeah, I
like
mean,
I
if you
said,
broke his
Danny
arm,
did.
that's not going to heal.
But he tried. He wrapped up
Oh, I
his
believe
arm,
that
and
too.
he went on the ice, and he couldn't hold on to his stick, and he played
Mhm.
anyway. And I'm pretty sure he got a goal or two even while he was doing that. But by game three of that series, he was done. And
Mhm.
at that point, we were actually up. I think it was game four that he couldn't go in. We were up 3-1, and we ended up losing the series in 7
Oof.
games in overtime. Where Danny Hodgson playing in the last 3 games with a Dean Bell and all the other guys
Mhm.
would have made a big difference in terms of us
Yeah. I
winning
mean,
the league. So
I
but
mean,
stuff
it is a
happens.
team sport, but you'd have to be living under a rock or just learning how these things work to not understand that. Yes, it's a team and it's a group effort, but sometimes you have that skilled player. That's why not everybody gets paid the same,
Yeah,
right? Like it
that's
doesn't take you look at any team and there's going to be that one standout
yep,
that's a difference maker if he's in the lineup or if he's not in the lineup. It doesn't matter what team you're on, it doesn't matter what sport you're in or where in the world you are.
yep,
That's just the way it is. And
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
If you want to
No,
see a team full of it, you watch any all-star game out there.
yeah. That's why playoffs are always a little
Mhm.
different because you find in playoffs the other team will take more runs at your star players,
Mhm.
take them out of your game. But everybody's very careful about not doing something incredibly stupid. You
Yeah,
know,
because I mean, taking that kind of a penalty, where you're gone for the league says you can't play for a couple of games, not just the ref kicking you out for 10 minutes or ending your night early. That that's a big time no-no because you're not in the lineup.
no,
You're not there. You're a missing body. And I can't see that as being a good thing anywhere. In fact, it'd probably backfire on you and give your opposing team a bunch more momentum.
yeah,
So, unless
yep,
you take one of their guys completely out, it's to me, psychologically, I think it puts your team at a disadvantage, and at the very least, it's going to rile up the other team and their fans. Um,
Well,
Now
that goes.
you mentioned Danny. He tried to come back.
Yeah,
He
he did.
tried to play through that injury. He had that hero moment. We hear about them all the time from the quote unquote glory days of hockey. So and so played with a concussion. So and so went out and got 204 stitches across his forehead so he could come back in, and the
Somebody
puck
played
bounced
in a
off his
broken
face before a
leg.
helmet. So
Yeah.
he staple gunned it back together. And as Keith has mentioned, it was like he was looking at my notes, except I know he doesn't. Logan Couture is done playing hockey. It looks
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah, this was just announced. He 36 years old. He was retiring based on an injury. It looks like they called it a lower body injury to begin with. He came back. He tried to play. He says it doesn't feel right. It's it. I think anybody over the age of 35, 6 years old or late up in your 40s and 50s, it's just your body doesn't want to bounce back.
No, it's harder.
And this seems to be, he's a little young for it, but he's, played many years of hockey, so it makes sense. But it seems to be that his hip is just not going to allow him. He doesn't feel comfortable, you know, um, continuing if it's not healing. He's tried, he's done everything he's supposed to do, he's saying, and it's just one of those things where he's like, I'm gonna hurt more than I'm gonna help.
Yep.
And he doesn't seem too upset or too happy to have to go, but he also understands that he is not giving anybody what he wants to. And it's a shitty part of athletics, period. But this is where we're at. What do you think about this?
Well, yeah. Not only injuries ending careers. I mean, an injury ended Danny. So I mean, I hate to keep coming back to Danny,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, he was on a power play in front of the net. I can't remember who they were playing, and somebody landed on him and broke his leg. Well, he never skated right again. He went on to
Mm-hmm.
have 17 or 18 more years as a pro hockey player, but he had those in Europe because
Mm-hmm.
probably the expectation wasn't as much. But Danny was, had been in Toronto and then in Vancouver, and he's really starting to come into his own. And to all of a sudden have your career ended either after 5 or 6 years or after 17 or 18 years, the expectation of, I don't know which players out there don't, but the expectation is play, one more year, one more year, one more year,
Mm-hmm.
one more year. Yes, this hurts and that hurts, but then you get done. And I have so many friends who are ex pro athletes that end up with life inhibiting
Mm-hmm.
repercussions from the injuries that they had as as professional athletes,
Mm-hmm.
competing and for the sake of the entertainment of those people who love to watch those sports. But I have a friend who only played 5 or 6 years, but he's in his mid 50s now, but
Mm-hmm.
he's had both knee replacements and both hip replacements in the last 5 or 6 years,
Ooh.
and uh, he's that's not uncommon. Yeah, especially knees and hips and shoulders, and
Mm-hmm.
those things seem to, and or people like me who
Ah, there it is.
concussions. You know, I've had tons of stitches. Stitches don't bother me, but the number of concussions I've had over the years from doing sports are making things difficult at this particular time in my own life. And
Mm-hmm.
you're always looking for solutions. So I'm having a lot of fun looking for those solutions. So
Well, I mean, you got that going for you, but yeah, I mean, those concussions, those are the ones where you're not right. Physically, you might be in better shape than when you were getting beat up, but it's these concussions. And it's been a running joke for as long as I can remember. Oh, your dad played hockey before helmets.
yeah, he did.
But the thing is, it's a rough game. I mean, football is discovering this, and when you have a like hockey and football in particular, very physical. And I'm
Yep.
not going to take anything away from any other
Yep.
sport, so don't at me in the comments out there. Uh, but in particular, those two are extremely rough. Um, and it's you might not take a baseball off a head, but if you take a baseball off the head, you're going to have a lot more problems than just concussions. You might be dead. Um,
Yep.
it's your body's great, but your mind's not right. CTE, we're only recently discovering is a much larger problem because it used to be it's like, oh, got my bell rung. And I'm a wrestling fan, as we've discussed. So I've read lots of books and heard lots of interviews and seen lots of things where it's like, yeah, I got my bell rung here. I saw stars here, yada, yada, yada. These guys have turned around now after decades. I've been going, Jesus, I've been concussed thousands of times. And I would imagine it's no different for football or hockey players either, because this is a nightly occurrence for these guys. It's very rare you're going to take a baseball off the nugget, but it would happen as well. They got helmets for a reason, and it, the concussion is the invisible one. You're not
Yep.
limping. Your body might look great, six pack abs, no body fat to speak of, the 24-inch pythons and everything. But you can't add up that toll of the amount of times your brain has been bruised, and it leads to issues. We've been quite worried about you for many years, to say the least. Now, glad you're still with us, by the way. Just going to throw that out there
Oh,
before
yeah,
anybody.
I'm just too stubborn to go away. That's that competitive spirit. Yeah,
Right?
it's I have so many friends. A lot of them have not gotten to be my age that have had
Mm-hmm.
problems, you know, uh, and those problems usually center around injuries to their brains. And
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm going to visit a doctor who's, it's not a one on one thing, it's a group thing. We're going to head down to Mexico because that's where he's running his event right now that
Mm-hmm.
I have been aware of and have gone to some of the other things that he's done, and I've found them very constructive. But he's a bit of a believer that there are things that we can do
Mm-hmm.
to not only to heal, but to you know, and make your mental capacities grow instead of perpetually going away. You're losing your memory for things like names, and you wonder whether is this just normal for growing old, or is this a
Mm-hmm.
repercussion from all of the injuries. I mean, I don't know how many games I've played in that I don't remember too much about what went on in games, and or uh, woken up after being off the ice for a little while, and or headed right back out, and somebody said, "No, no, no, the game's all over," and,
Mm-hmm.
or you played right straight through those games, and then this stuff happens. And I certainly do not think that I'm in a minority. I tend to, after college, play a rather more aggressive style of game than I did. But I can remember having concussions in rugby. I can
Mm-hmm.
remember, well, I broke my neck when I was 13 years old with a hit from behind in hockey. So it's,
We're having one of those moments where I'm now discovering things about my father I did not know.
I got to wear one of those halos. It was really cool.
Today years old. Yes,
Uh,
I want to get into that story, but Jeff
so,
has joined us again. Keith, Jeff, thanks for
hi,
joining us.
Jeff.
Jeff is saying, yeah, concussions are tough. Big improvements on gear and knowledge. I think knowledge is really key.
Yep.
I remember when the NHL, or not the NHL, the NFL really started looking at concussion issues, and so they had the shell on top of the helmet.
Yep.
Initially, I believe that was the mid to late 90s.
Yep.
Um, put your coach's hat back on here.
Ouch.
Dealing with a player that's got a concussion that may or may not want to come out of the game, or be told, no, no, you're a mess. You're sitting down for a couple of games now.
Yeah.
What's any tips or stories or tactics on that? Because
Yeah. No.
athletes want to athlete. It takes a lot to make one go, you know what? I am really fucking hurt.
Yeah.
Um,
Athletes
I need
don't
to not
say
do
that.
this.
Yeah, Matt, right off the bat,
No, they
athletes.
don't.
It's certainly in my day, and certainly in my coaching days with junior hockey players, the last thing an athlete wants to do is not play.
Mm-hmm.
They will tell any lie that they possibly can
Wow.
to make sure that they do get the chance to play. And I know when concussions became an issue in the late 80s and 90s, it was very difficult being a player who
Mm-hmm.
played through a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, I was told to, hey, you've only rung your bell, stop being a baby, get the hell out
Uh-huh.
there. The team needs you. And going out there and doing that. And then what it became as a problem as a coach, you'd see that happen. You'd understand a player is injured. Okay, go, let's get him off the ice for a shift,
Mm-hmm.
and then to realize how the medical what do we want to call them, society started
Mm-hmm.
bringing forth all of this information, and
Yeah.
then realizing some of the symptoms that they had talked about that you had experienced. I became more and more, oh well, we're taking them out of this game.
Mm-hmm.
But there's guys who have serious enough concussions that they need the the brain takes a while to heal,
Oh yes.
and for them to say, "Oh, I'm okay now, coach," I don't hate you completely for taking me out of the game, but I will hate you if you don't let me play in the next one,
Mm-hmm.
and have to realize that bringing in concussion protocol in youth sports and in pro sports was probably one of the larger and better steps that athletics have taken to keep players from being permanently injured. At the time, they
Mm-hmm.
don't realize they're permanently injured, but 5 or 10 years out of their careers, there is a huge issue.
Yep.
Suicides to begin with.
Well, and then there's the painkiller issue that goes along with that, right? Like with a
Yeah.
CTE, that migraines become more prevalent. Jeff is saying you don't have much option more to play with any type of head injury, and I think that's great. I
Yes.
mean, let's
Hallelujah.
honest to God, and I hate to bring this back to pro wrestling. I do, but I'm gonna. There's
Go
a
ahead.
um years ago, and I saw this shift. They were working on it. We were starting to see the beginnings of this, but it wasn't until the Chris Benoit tragedy
Yeah.
um, that it really got prevalent. Now, a gentleman by the name of Chris Nowinski has his own foundation. I can't remember the name of it. He used to wrestle for WWE in the early 2000s. Um, Anyways, for those of you that aren't aware of the Chris Benoit tragedy, he was supposed to show up to work on a pay per view. He didn't. I remember watching that pay per view and going, "Oh, so and so's in the match and not him." And what had happened was he had killed his wife and his son and committed suicide after doing so. And it was initially reported all over the country. Oh, it's a murder suicide. It is roid rage, and they got all on the health and wellness. Now, Chris Nowinski and his foundation and his doctors got a hold of Chris's brain, and with all the concussions he had taken in his pro wrestling career, and this is, and yes, there were some other uh, PEDs in his system, and had to have been for years. He wasn't a big dude, but he worked hard. His brain at early 40s resembled the brain of a terminal stage Alzheimer's patient in his 80s.
Yeah.
That's
That,
concussions.
yep. That's
Obviously, and you know what? I'm not going to say obviously. With athletes, most of them are doing something extra in this day and age. Whether or not it's legal or illegal, none of our business. Lots of stuff has been developed that is not considered harmful by any governing agent, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's great for your brain either. Um,
we
and
can't
that is
determine that.
really when the turnaround in across all sports. That's when I really started noticing it's like, oh no, you got a bump on the head, you're going to go sit down. That's when a lot of this CTE stuff started becoming prevalent, because there's this athlete, had been an athlete all of his life, world renowned, top of his chosen athletics, and his brain looked like it was twice as old, with a terminal case of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And it, you couldn't tell that to look at him. Wrestling fans were freaking stunned, absolutely stunned. Let's see what Jeff has to say here. He's agreeing with us. You play through all types of injuries and pains when you're an athlete, and you love playing the game. Jeff himself is guilty of playing through things in his different careers. Luckily, he never had too much of a serious run of serious injuries. So, it's you'll lose your spot. That's the fear. I mean, it's you're gonna sure
Perfectly
absolutely
honest with you,
Mhm,
Matt. Look, with you're talking about pro athletes. I mean, the ones that are very, very careful about what they are or aren't doing, and you look at athletes that have suffered major concussions. I mean, one of the kids that I know that had major concussions, and you saw a lot of them on TV, was Paul Correa. And
mhm.
I mean, I think that Paul's career probably ended significantly sooner
Oh,
than maybe what it should have. And but look at all the other injuries
mhm,
and and the things that players keep doing. I mean, oh God, I shouldn't say this. Uh, Back in my day,
mhm,
I had just had a phenomenal upper in my life with being able to go to NHL training camp, not expecting to make it. I got there more because of a friend, not because of what I had done. And then I got a great big slap on the back for doing as well as I did. And I went to a farm team. And very shortly after that, I tore an Achilles tendon, hooked
mhm.
my skate on the back of a net when we were racing around the net. And so that pretty much puts you out. Uh,
Yep.
what they decided though in that period, it wasn't torn too badly, is that we need you to keep playing. I mean, you have the potential to elevate yourself, and so I agreed to play on morphine shots and
Oh,
cortisone shots. So
and
we
that's the start
recorded.
of a slippery slope too. Like when
Well,
you start taking
the
the
court
drugs to get through the game,
the cortisone shot. Well, it only
the
lasted
cortisone
about
not so
3
much. The
weeks.
morphine was more what I was
No, the
looking at.
cortisone is what it made the Achilles tendon brittle, where it was
Mhm,
stretched and slightly torn. It actually tore apart, broke. And it did that because I could use the morphine shots to keep playing.
mhm,
So it, ended a career which I really didn't think was going to be a career anyway. It's as good as you think you can be or as good as you want to be. You make these sacrifices to try to get that one more step. And
mhm,
whether I'd have done that or not, I mean, I went on to have a 50-year career as a teacher, you
mhm.
know,
And which
and
is you've done quite well with that. Not for nothing. Not
no,
for nothing. I
no,
mean, that in
no.
itself is pretty good, but you're
Yeah.
dancing around something I really want to dive into. So keep going with your story here.
Anyway, so I look back as maybe I shouldn't have, But
Mm-hmm.
then I look back again and say, well, I wouldn't have had that 3 weeks if I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't have done that. And but I was taking a chance on those 3 weeks at hoping to have an extended, or a much longer career as a pro hockey player, which
Mm-hmm.
I had always. That's what I'd wanted to be. I mean, I had an uncle in the sporting goods business when I was 14,
Mm-hmm.
who had a fairly successful sporting good business, and he offered my mom the opportunity, you know, get his schooling done, get him some university. I don't have any children. He's into sports. It'd be great for him to take over this sporting goods company. I'm not going to tell you what the name of it was because it did become fairly famous. He was a fairly wealthy
Maybe tell
guy.
me off air. I'll
Yeah,
figure
we
that
can
out.
do it off air. Anyway, I said, no, no, I'm going to be a pro hockey player. Stupid
Mm-hmm.
14, 15-year-olds. No, you know
You know
what?
what? Oh, show
I,
me
I
a
don't
15
regret
year old that's
anything
playing
that I've
hockey.
done. Mhm.
Show me a 15-year-old playing hockey that doesn't think that way, and I'll show you a 15-year-old that's not going to go too much further.
Well, you have to
You have
consider
to. You
me
have
as
to
a
have that.
15-year-old at that point, Matt. I'd
Yep.
won the Ontario Minor Hockey Player of the Year. I had been invited to. I had been signed on a C contract. I'd been invited to go to a junior A hockey team.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone to that junior A hockey team and done very well and put on that hockey team. And as I was playing on that hockey team, I developed all the bad habits of some of the other older players on the team. Going to the pool hall
Yep.
instead of going to this or going to that. Certainly, and the not going to was school. And so
Those
your
stories I have
your
heard.
grandmother and
Yep.
and my mother pulled me out, and they sent me off to school. And I
Mm-hmm.
was pretty bitter about all of that because it
It's
at
not
the
what you want to do
time
when you want to
just
do it.
wasn't what I wanted to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I wanted to be, a pro hockey player. I wanted to play with Gordie Howe, or I wanted to play with the Toronto Maple Leafs,
Mm-hmm.
in those days were pretty competitive in a 6-team league. And I'd gone to a junior hockey camp, and everybody said, "Whew, this kid is almost as good as a kid playing in
Mm-hmm.
Oshawa. Not as good as a kid played in Oshawa." And after they pulled that away, I pouted for years.
I don't think that's a unique experience, because this is what I wanted to get to. There is the pushing through, as we've discussed earlier. There's the pushing through the injury. You got your bell rung. Oh, it's only one arm that's broken. As long as you don't undo my skate, the ankle won't swell up until after the game. Get back on the
Oh,
ice, sort of
that's a
thing.
perfect one.
And that is, oh yeah, believe me, I've heard a couple of those stories. But it's one thing where you're the professional league in the playoffs, uh, but when you can talk some sense into them probably a little easier than you can to that kid that was in your position, that is right there,
Mhm.
right there, a few minutes on the ice and a couple of good impressions from being able to sign that contract. I think if you looked at the NCAA today and throughout its history, you will find thousands, tens of thousands of athletes, baseball, hockey, football, basketball, that are playing to go from the NCAA to the pros. And they're like, I just got to get through this one quarter, this one play, this one period, this one game, this one practice, the scouts are in the stands, and they push it with that injury.
Yep,
And that's it.
daily. And
If
then
they're
they're
if they're
done.
lucky, they can have the 50-year coaching career that you managed to salvage.
Yep. Yeah, and
But
I
even that,
I watched out for that. Like I said, I haven't gone through that. You know, I was you were certainly as a coach, and certainly if it was a difference maker player, influenced for the sake of winning. And after that, for a while, I got out of. I wasn't a winning coach. I didn't do it to win. And a lot of people found that extremely weird, that I won all the time, and yet
Mm-hmm.
the winning part wasn't the most. And this is when, Hockey Canada was coming down with all these different programs, and
Mm-hmm.
we need to be. I hope that I was fair with everybody, and it wasn't just winning that made the difference for me, because I always kind of felt that there is a day after, and it's important that you play to compete, to
Mm-hmm.
win the game, but the winning shouldn't be the most important part. I mean, I really stressed with all of my hockey players. I hope most of them got the message that win or lose, it's what did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be better tomorrow? Will you be happier if you're better? You know, we won today. That's great. What did you learn? I know kids used to get pretty pissed off at me when
Oh yeah, because there.
do
Well, I mean,
that.
there's.
If you
I would.
lost, what did you learn? It was all of what did you learn? Because if you learned something, you won. And if you won, you have an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to be better. If you are better, the next game you might be able to use something from what you've learned to
Mm-hmm.
win, because the goal is you must win to, or what you figure as a player, you must win to progress. If
Mm-hmm.
my team isn't winning, I'm not helping. Then that's why a lot of players that are decent players playing on teams that are maybe not decent teams want out.
Mm-hmm.
They want out. They want to move someplace else. They want to go someplace where, not necessarily where the winning is important, but if they are doing the winning, then for sure they're going to get more opportunity. You
I
know.
don't think it's just restricted to the kids because you hear about it every season in any sport, especially kind of this time of year for for hockey and basketball, but leading into the season for sure, as the GMs and the coaches are all talking about what they're doing for next year. Well,
Hmm.
I want to go to a team with a shot at the cup.
Yep.
You
Or
hear it
teams
all
that
the
are
time.
bad teams will try and move a player to a
Hmm.
shot where you have a cup, if that player has done them the service of giving them everything that they can at a high level.
You know what?
When
And
that
that's
player is
that's.
getting close to the end of his career, you look at Boston did with Ray Bork.
Hmm.
That's an example of. That's why a lot of
Well,
high end players with good history, if their team loves them, will give them that opportunity. Some of those players turn it down. No, I'm not leaving.
yeah,
Which
I mean,
we do.
there's all sorts of aspects of that, but it's two sides of a different coin. There's the player
Yeah.
that, or it's the two different sides of the same coin. There's the player that is like, I I do not want to re-sign with you this year. I'm I got more games behind me than I have ahead of me. I want to go to a contender. And then there's the
Yes.
team going, look, we know what we're looking at. You deserve the shot at this. This isn't us not wanting you here. It's not that you aren't contributing. As a matter of fact, you contribute so much that we're going to take this shot, this hit,
Mhm.
and we're going to move you somewhere where you can get this.
Yeah.
It's two different mentalities, maybe two sides of the same coin of going to that contender late in your career as a big time contributor, whether it's you going, I don't want to play here anymore, send me to insert
Yep.
team here, as
Yep.
opposed to the team going, look, we want you
Or
to have this
I will
shot and we're
only
not
let you
going
trade me to so many. Okay, I'm
to.
not happy here, but uh, these are the only teams that you can trade me to, because they're all contenders, and I'll have the chance. Players
Hmm.
can play
Yeah, when you
play
start
that
getting
game
that
too. So
crybaby thing, you lose. I think you lose a lot of sympathy. At least you do to me. Like if you're
yeah,
holding out for more money because you're only getting 15 million for 3 seasons, I'm like, fuck you. However, if you're the guy that has the contract for $20 million put in front of you, take it.
Yeah.
Take it. If you're holding out for more money, you're kind of a bit of a douchebag in
That's why
but it's just the way it is. I mean, this is not a new thing to discover. Remember when Eric Lindros got drafted, did not want to go to Quebec.
No.
One of the bigger temper tantrums in NHL
Which was
history.
amazing. Can you think of what that Quebec team would have been had he gone? So,
well, I mean,
in Colorado and won Stanley Cups. Did Eric Lindros never won a Stanley Cup? Did he?
Yeah. Lindros, no.
No,
but he had a hell of a career in Philadelphia.
Oh, he did.
But again, he was a concussion guy.
Yes.
They scrambled his egg good.
Yes.
And that wasn't easy because he was a big boy. But it was that
when you're a junior hockey player and you play in the World Juniors and then go right straight to, I can't remember what series it was, but it was like, it was the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
He's a junior age hockey player playing, in the Olympics, and he hasn't even played an NHL game. That's a pretty talented hockey player.
That's definitely, ears should perk up at that point. The agents, coaches, GMs, and fans are all sticking their heads out of the ground like lemmings. What do we have over here? Well, I wanted to get into some discussion about the upcoming draft as the prospects are sort of finishing up their season in the minor leagues, but we've hit an hour, so I don't want to go too terribly much longer. We're going to have to discuss this. We've avoided most of the playoff talks. We talked about it for 2 weeks. We're going to let the teams have their finish it out and get the standings and everything all sorted out, see how that goes. We'll be back next week if Doug's computer cooperates. We had a bit of a technical issue there. For those of you that are watching live or on YouTube, you may notice he's been very still. His screen's been frozen since about 4 seconds after I hit the live stream button, but that's okay because we got his camera back. So barring any technical difficulties, we will be back next week. We're going to take a break the week after that, as both Doug and I are out of town. We are traveling. We're both headed south. He much further than I am, but we're not done. We'll come back. We'll see what's been going on the last couple of weeks. I think this injury discussion from all aspects is something we're going to have to get into. And because you keep bringing them up, I'm going to have to reach out to Mr. Hodgson, see if he's got some time for us after we get back here, and see if I can line up a few guests for the other side of our trip. Any last minute comments here that I've, cut your water off on that you needed to get out, or anything you want to promote?
I want to promote everybody who's willing to go and pick up a hockey stick and chase a rubber puck around an arena. Stay safe, okay? And be great, and because you can.